25.24 is going to be the final patch this season, so these will be 3 of the best champions that you can play for every single role if your main goal is to climb the fastest for end of season. But first, some hard truths. YouTube is built for the algorithm, not your LP. That means clickbait titles, junk food topics, and stretching simple tips for watch time. We're part of that system too, just like every guide and YouTube channel. And because every video is randomly surfaced to you as a singular guide and topic, advice often contradicts what you just watched. No context, no plan, more confusion. On our website at SkillCapped, however, we're free from all that, allowing us to focus on what actually matters. We teach you the most efficient way to really rank you up fast with the same premium editing and challenger level coaches you see here, just without the algorithm's hoops. Start with our essentials courses for every role, updated for season 15. These are meticulously planned step-by-step guides that build your fundamentals in the right order. Once you finish essentials, move into the advanced courses. Deep dive wave control, advanced mechanics, the proven bronze to diamond climb paths, and literal world record jungle clears for each jungler, all structured so lessons stack instead of contradict. While you follow these learning paths, we also release our popular challenger walkthroughs. New sessions every week showing how to abuse the best meta champs for your elo. Supported with an AMA section below each video, which we always respond to. We back it up with a Climb 5 Divisions improvement guarantee while you're actively using SkillCapped, plus a 30-day refund change of mind policy on top of that, so there's literally no risk. Stop trying to mix and match random guides and start following a structured path, far away from all the noise. Click the limited time discount link below to join SkillCapped today. So it's not much of a shocker that the brand new champion released is in a powerful spot, as Zehen kicks off the top 3 for top lane. So Zehen's kit is just so powerful for solo queue because he's a fighter who actually thrives in team fights. You have the gap close from E combined with the engage from R, which gives you great backline access, and then because of Zehen's passive revive, it makes playing hyper aggro with him in fights actually the most optimal way of playing him. You dive in on the enemy's carries and force a few of the enemy team members to try and focus you down, but then even if they kill you, you just stall time for your team with the revive, and then your team swoops in and helps you finish off the fight. He's just a champ who absolutely thrives in chaotic, grouped up fights, especially around Otacon, where there's a high chance that the enemy team is grouped close together, because the more enemies you hit with your spells, the faster you stack your passive to amplify your damage and receive that revive. If you guys want a full, extensive breakdown of Zehen, then definitely check out our collaboration guide we made with Riot that is up on their YouTube channel, as we'll link it in the top right-hand corner of the screen. The one meta matchup that Zehen is really struggling against right now and worth a ban is Malphite. This is due in part to Malphite just being a really strong pick in meta, but it's also due to the fact that Malphite has the attack speed slow and also has the ability to lock you down in fights with his R, so stacking your passive up does become a lot more difficult with a Malphite in the game. For the build, you're rushing Trinity Force or Stridebreaker, going Sundered Sky second, and then Death's Dance or Steric's Gauge third. Trinity is the ideal rush, but if you are into a ranged top laner or a top laner with lots of mobility, then opting for Stridebreaker so you have the active slow is good value. You want Death's Dance if the enemy team is majority physical damage, but if they are heavier magic damage, going for Steric's is the play. Conqueror is going to be the optimal keystone rune, while you'll grab Resolve for secondaries. So the one top lane champ that you simply can't go wrong with right now, and a great pick in every single elo bracket, is Malphite. Malphite is always going to be really solid for solo queue because of what his kit has to offer, but since Riot buffed him a few patches ago, it's put him in an excessively powerful spot. You're just never irrelevant if you're playing Malphite, because all it takes is for you to land your R on a priority target in a team fight, and you can end up being more useful than the enemy top, even if they got a lead against you in lane. Malphite actually likes the fact that Zehen has been released, as it's his most common top lane matchup, and Malphite is winning over 55% of the time against him. With Sylas being picked so much right now as a jungler, it's a really good ban to use even if you don't directly lane against him in top lane, because Sylas with Malphite R in a late game fight can just single-handedly win the enemy team the game. The best build for Malphite consists of Sunfire or Hollow Radiance Rush into situational tank items like Thornmail, Frozen Heart, or Kaenic Rookern. For the rune page, you'll want to swap between Comet and Grasp depending on the matchup, as Grasp is really good into champs who need to be in melee range to deal damage like Yone, Jax, Yasuo, Aurelia, or Tryndamere, while Comet is best into spellcasting champs like Aatrox or Alawi, or against ranged top laners. So a top lane champion who's been on the rise as of recent due to the emergence of a new build is Riven. For the longest time, Riven players have been liking Eclipse as their rush item, but they have opted into a much more snowball-y setup as of late, going for Axiom Arc as a rush. So Axiom Arc is going to provide you with 20 ability haste along with additional ability haste for your R cooldown when you score a takedown on an opponent. On top of this, you grab Lucidity Boots, which provide another 10 ability haste. Basically what this means is that by rushing Axiom Arc and Lucidity Boots, you put your R on as short of a cooldown as possible during the early to mid game, which allows for more windows of opportunity to be max aggressive. And it's not like you're really losing out on a ton of durability either, as you are without the shield from Eclipse, but it's still the exact same second item being Sundered Sky, while Death's Dance is generally the best third pickup. This Axiom Rush on Riven has yet to catch on a ton in the lower ranks, but if you look at the data for Master Tier and above, it's currently the most purchased rush item on the champ. In regards to Riven's matchups right now, like most most top laners, Malphite is just absolutely dominating, and Riven players are only winning 44% of the time in the matchup, so it's a good ban to consider. The best rune page is going to consist of Conqueror for the Keystone, and then it's Inspiration for secondaries with Cashback and Jack of all trades. So a jungler who's really liking the way the current meta is aligned and kicking off the top 3 for the role is Sylas. Sylas Jungle is currently the most played jungler in the game, and for good reason. With Zehen and Malphite being 2 of the highest prioritized top lane champs in the game, Sylas R is getting an absurd amount of value. Sylas with Zehen R just unlocks him to freely dive the backline in fights and lock down carries, so the champ's release has been great for Sylas. Malphite is even being picked in the jungle right now at a decent rate, so the 25.23 patch just gave Sylas a nice indirect boost. Champions who have reliable peel power are who Sylas hates playing into the most, so banning out Lulu or Melio is good value. For the build on Sylas, you're rushing Rocket Belt, going into Riftmaker second, and then Zanya's or Rabadon's third. Conqueror is the best Keystone rune, while Inspiration is slotted in for secondaries. A really great champion that you can use as a counter to many of the most played junglers in meta, and our second solo carry of the patch is Jax. So Jax jungle has been really strong for a while now, and he'll be a really consistent jungler for you to pull out for your end of season climb. The only meta matchup that Jax has a negative win rate against in recent patches is Mundo, and with Mundo nerfed for 25.24, we'll be seeing less of him, so that's a positive for Jax. Jax loves playing into these champions who rely on auto-attacking to win out in skirmishes, so Viego, Sylas, Master Yi, and Diana are all really good matchups for him. And the bad matchups that Jax has aren't even being played at high rates right now, with Lilia and Mundo outside of Jax's top 10 most common matchups. For the build on Jax, you always rush Trinity Force and go into Sundered Sky second, and for third item, Zanya slots in for most games. Once you have your Trinity Force complete and are available, you should be looking to take fights more aggressively. There are a few champs who can outduel Jax when he has that spike, so focus on playing off numbers advantages and forcing fights when the enemy team is split up. The best Keystone rune is Lethal Tempo, while Inspiration Tree should be prioritized for secondaries. One of the most consistent junglers across all elo brackets right now, and rounding out the top 3 is Diana. The thing about Diana is that she has such an easy win condition to play for. Early ganks aren't that great, so your focus should be on clearing your camps as efficiently as possible and reaching level 6 before the enemy jungler. Once you get 6, that is where you begin to put your foot on the gas and look for skirmishes or gank opportunities. Fighting around grubs when you have your ultimate is really powerful, and if it's an even 3v3 or 4v4 fight, then the team with Diana is going to come out on top most of the time if you're able to land a multi-man R. The core build that a lot of high elo Diana players are liking right now revolves around rushing Rocket Belt into Liandry second and Riftmaker third. So just an all-out AP bruiser setup, which suits Diana really well, as she doesn't have an escape tool once she's in a fight, so that added durability helps you survive longer and be relevant other than just diving in, hitting R, and then dying instantly. Jax is a matchup worth banning right now, as you can't really be the aggressor in the matchup, because if you dive into Jax and get in melee range, then he just pops his E and turns the fight around in his favor. So buffed for a second patch in a row, and a mid lane champ you should highly consider picking up for end of season is Swain. Swain mid has been really strong for a while now, but with buffs in 2 straight patches, he's bordering OP territory. Our challenger mid laner Shori has a new full game commentary for Swain up on our website, so it can help you out a bunch if you're new to the champ. Swain is great for solo queue because he's a phenomenal pick into many of the more annoying melee mid laners that you see. Swain plays great in a Sylas, Akali, Galio, and Yone, because for Swain to be most effective, he needs champions diving in on him, and that's what all 4 of those picks need to do. It's longer range that is going to give Swain most difficulties, so banning out Hui is good value. Pre-6 with Swain isn't anything special, as his kill threat isn't very high, but when you get level 6 and have your R, that's when you can be more proactive. Swain scales really well with items, so it's important you put emphasis on high CS scores. Blackfire Torch will be the rush item for Swain, and then it's either Liandry's or Rylai's second. If you're into a squishier enemy comp, then going Rylai's makes sense, but into more health stackers or tanks, grab Liandry's. Zanya's is always a good later game purchase on Swain because it allows for him to stall for very long duration fights. For Swain's Keystone rune, Aerie is what's working the best right now, coupled with Resolve for secondaries. Buffed in 25.23 and making her way back into the top 3 for mid lane is Ahri. So Ahri's got a bit of damage added to her W, and it's a nice buff because it's just more guaranteed damage in a trade and makes your poke in melee matchups early on in lane hit harder. There's even an underrated build going around right now that around 50% of challenger Ahri players are running, but only 20% of players plat and below are taking. Instead of rushing Malignance, you grab Blackfire Torch into Cosmic Drive as your 2-item core, and also swap out Sork Shoes for Lucidity Boots. So this build is all about getting a ton of ability haste on your basic abilities so you can be more of a consistent threat in fights. Charm cooldown will drop from 12 to 7 seconds, while Q drops from 7 to 4 seconds, so you just have a lot more reliable skirmish strength with this setup. One mid lane matchup worth a ban right now who's giving most Ahri players issues is Mel. Mel's W just makes it really difficult for Ahri to be as aggressive as she wants. It's already pretty much impossible for Ahri to 100-0 a champion with her full combo, so the fact Mel can just block a bunch of your damage for free doesn't bode well for how Ahri wants to play. For Ahri's rune page, you want to be taking Electrocute for the Keystone rune, along with sorcery for secondaries. So the best mid lane assassin in the game right now, and arguably the best mid laner that you can use to climb out of the lower ranks for end of season, is Naafiri. Naafiri is simply the best assassin mid for the less mechanically skilled because of how easy she is to execute. Q is a skill shot, so there's a bit of skill expression there, but if you get a lead with Naafiri, the fact that she has the point and click lock on with R just makes finding catch plays super easy. Naafiri has become even more insane over the past few patches because 3 of the runes she takes got buffed. You go Hail of Blades for the Keystone and then dip into Inspiration Secondary, running Cashback and Triple Tonic, which were all recently buffed. Your 1-item spike of Voltaic Cyclo Sword is incredible for Naafiri because the passive from the item provides a 99% slow when you auto attack an opponent, and because of this, it allows for you to easily get all 3 quick auto attacks off from Hail of Blades. The guaranteed burst damage coming out of the setup is just incredible, which makes it even more noob friendly. Champions who can easily dodge out on your Q damage are who you'll have a bit more of a difficult time against, so banning out Yasuo is good value. So making our way down to the bot lane, the best solo carry ADC to close out the season is Miss Fortune. If you're an ADC main looking to make that end of season push, Riot gave you a gift by directly buffing MF and then buffing the rune page she runs as well. MFR got an AD ratio buff, and ratio buffs are always more impactful for Miss Fortune than most other ADCs because she just stacks AD in her build and doesn't go for any attack speed at all. The rune page is going to consist of First Strike for the Keystone, followed up by Cashback and Triple Tonic, which were just recently buffed. The standard build for Miss Fortune has you rushing Bloodthirster into the Collector second and Infinity Edge third. However, you can opt for a lethality build in games where the entire enemy team is squishy. So overall, you're playing to maximize Miss Fortune's R damage with this build, with all the AD and then the bonus damage you get from First Strike. First Strike synergizes really nicely with that AD ratio buff because in order for you to take advantage of the buff, you need items, and First Strike along with Cashback allows you to reach your items faster. Champions who have easy backline access are who Miss Fortune wants to avoid playing into, so banning out Zehen is going to be good value right now. An ADC who's back in a great spot after the 25.23 patch, and our second solo carry selection is Tristana. With Jinx and Ashe nerfed last patch and Tristana getting buffed, it's allowed her to move up and become a top tier ADC once again. Tristana is an ADC who has a lot more agency over how games play out and can make things happen on her own, so with her back in meta, you should highly consider picking her up. What's really nice about Trist is that she's extremely versatile as well. You can pair her with an enchanter or a melee support and thrive regardless, while her early game kill threat is just as good as her late game presence. Level 6 all-in burst threat is insane with her E and R, so she fits in great with a Leona or Nautilus, but at the same time, you passively gain bonus range the longer games last due to your passive, so an enchanter by your side in late game fights will make it really difficult for enemies to take you down. Since you want to have the opportunities to be aggressive in lane, banning out a support who can neutralize really well like Karma is a good idea. For the build on Trist, you want Yuntal if possible, but if you do run into a situation where you get an early kill in lane and need to take a base but don't have over 1300 for a BF sword, then opting for the Collector so that you can exert as much pressure in lane is a viable alternative. For the rune page, you should be grabbing Lethal Tempo with Inspiration for secondaries. If you are with a melee engaged support, then definitely take Triple Tonic in secondaries because your level 6 all-in power will become even more insane. And then for the third solo carry ADC of the patch, one of the more underrated picks of the game is Vayne. Vayne has become indirectly stronger recently with 2 of her more annoying matchups getting nerfed in Ashe and Caitlyn. If you use MF and Trist as more of your blind pick selections and then pull out Vayne if your support intends on locking in an enchanter, then you'll be set up really well for 25.24. Vayne, when paired with Lulu, Melio, or Nami, is as close to a free win as you're going to get if you can reach 2 items. And if you can get to 3 items and pick up Hexplate, then you're basically a pseudo tank who's dealing a mass amount of consistent DPS. If you've been having a more difficult time playing into Zehen as an ADC, then Vayne as an answer is really good because it's pretty easy for Vayne to kite Zehen around and not allow him to stick in fights to stack his passive. For the rush item on Vayne, you have 2 options, being Kraken Slayer or Blade of the Rune King. In our ADC itemization course that we made for this season, we discovered that Kraken will be the higher DPS option, but Blade does have the perk of providing lifesteal. So you kind of gotta weigh out whether or not you feel like you need the sustain from Blade. If lane is going super smoothly and you aren't getting poked down at all, then just opt for Kraken, but in tougher matchups, going towards Blade of the Rune King is a good idea. And then for Vayne's rune setup, you want Lethal Tempo for the Keystone, followed by Resolve for secondaries. Since you want to get out of laning phase unscathed with Vayne, using your ban on a meta support who has strong poke power like Karma is a good idea. Buff for 25.24 and back in the top 3 for support is going to be Braum. So Braum's getting some added durability with his base health going up and passive damage is being increased as well. Braum has been in a perfectly balanced spot in recent patches, so with these buffs going through, he's moving into a top tier spot. Just having Braum as a pick you can pull out against Miss Fortune is really good value for 25.24. Miss Fortune is a top 3 pick rate ADC across all ELO brackets right now and is number 1 in gold and below, so pulling out Braum and saving your E for when MF tries to use R in fights gives Braum immense value. Ranged supports are who Braum would like to avoid laning against, and especially those who have sustain, so with Nami being picked at such a high rate right now, she's a good ban to consider. For Braum's build, something really interesting is that Solstice Slay and Celestial Opposition both have near identical pick rates, but Solstice wins about 4% more. So if you're into an enemy comp who lacks considerable burst threat, then opt into Solstice Slay instead of Celestial. Braum is already really tanky from his W and E, so the damage reduction from Celestial can be a bit overkill. And then for Braum's rune page, you want Guardian for the keystone, followed by Triumph and Haste for secondaries. So the one constant over the past couple of months in the meta has been the fact that Melio has remained a top tier support. We were hoping that going into the end of the season, Riot would make some sort of change that would shake up the support meta, but that won't be the case, so Melio will remain the best solo queue enchanter. Melio is one of those champs where you're always going to get value out of him due to how easy his kit is to pilot. Just throwing your E and W on carries in fights and tossing out Q if enemies try to dive in takes no skill at all. Min-maxing R usage is the only thing that can be a little more tricky, but even then, you can't really go wrong with using your R to try and save a teammate who's been caught out. It's just using your R on a teammate who has no presence at all in fights and is super far behind that you want to try and avoid. So keeping track of how well your teammates are doing is really important when playing Melio. Worst matchups for Melio are going to be against hook supports like Blitz and Pike, as you can't counter their hooks with your Q or R, so either is a good ban. You want to be rushing Echoes of Helia into Moonstone as the core build in most of your games, but you can swap Moonstone for Ardent Sensor if the enemy team is more tanky, and you need as much damage as possible to chew through them in fights. And then to round out the top 3 for support, rivaling Melio as the best enchanter support is Nami. Melio is definitely the better low elo enchanter support, but the higher rank you move up, the more you can get out of Nami. The thing about Nami is that she has the ability to exert a lot of pressure early on in lane, but she needs her ADC to be semi-competent in order for that to work. Throwing your E on your ADC provides them with a nice quick burst, and then you've got the heals from W, so if your ADC plays aggro early on in lane, you can just win through war of attrition, whittling the enemy down, healing up with W, and then eventually gaining the health advantage. You don't even need to play Nami with Lucian either. Long gone are the days where Nami is only viable with Lucian, as she's great with meta ADCs like Misfortune, Jinx, or Ashe. The Tristana duo is incredibly strong as well because of how much burst you can provide Tristana at level 6. What's really great about Nami as well is that you're basically full build on one item. Imperial Mandate is the only item that you need in order to be effective with Nami, and it's such a big power spike for her as the additional damage it provides your carry is incredible. The only downside to Nami is the fact that she's more vulnerable to heavy engage or being picked off and bursted out right away, so banning out Blitzcrank is a good idea. For Nami's rune page, you want Airy for the Keystone rune and then Resolve for secondaries.
Alright guys, one last thing, our rank up guarantee is insane. It's like signing up for the gym and getting a refund if you don't get ripped. That's how confident we are in SkillCapped. We obsess over making the best guides with top players, rigorous testing, and top tier video editing to make your climb easy. If you're ready to level up, visit SkillCapped.com and see the difference.
So there you have it, everyone. Those are the best champs for every single role as we reach the end of Season 15. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you back soon.